My mother labeled me the second choice daughter my entire life. Can you imagine having your entire life overshadowed, constantly feeling like a second choice? What if the person meant to love you most publicly declared your sister deserved your fiancé more? That night, at my own engagement dinner, my mother didn't just tell me I was second best, she unleashed a betrayal so deep, it shattered everything I thought I knew. And what happened next? Oh, it was a mess. A beautiful, messy, satisfying mess. My entire life, my mom branded me the backup daughter. Her words echoed in my head, a constant hum of inadequacy. My older sister, Vanessa, was the golden child. Prettier, smarter, more talented, and my mother made damn sure I knew it every single day. A, be on a test. Why can't you be more like Vanessa, with her straight A's? Joining the soccer team? Cute, but Vanessa was a state champion in volleyball. Getting into a good college? Nice, but not the Ivy League like Vanessa. I existed just in case something happened to the real one. Can you imagine carrying that weight? At 18, I packed my bags and ran. I built my own life, brick by agonizing brick, carving out a space where I could finally breathe. Then Luis came along. He was everything I'd ever dreamed of, kind, supportive. He loved me, all of me, just as I was. 6 months ago, he proposed. I said yes without a second thought. We decided on an engagement dinner with both our families. A part of me dreaded my mother's presence, that familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. But Luis, ever the optimist, convinced me it could be a fresh start. The dinner started beautifully. A fancy restaurant, warm laughter. For the first hour, my mother was on her best behavior. She even complimented my dress, a genuine shock. Then Vanessa arrived. Late, of course. She swept in, wearing a white dress that screamed, "Look at me," and immediately launched into her latest promotion. My mother's eyes lit up, just as they always did when Vanessa entered a room. The conversation pivoted instantly. For the next 30 minutes, it was the Vanessa show. I really did, to steer it back to our engagement, to us. But Mom kept redirecting, glorifying Vanessa's achievements. Then she stood up. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced. My heart fluttered. Finally, I thought, maybe now she'll say something nice about me. She raised her glass, beamed at Luis. "I'm so happy for Luis," she gushed. "He's such a wonderful man." My chest swelled. This is it. Then, she looked at Vanessa. Her smile widened. "It's just such a shame," she chuckled, "that he met the wrong sister first." A sick, cold dread washed over me. She laughed, like it was a harmless joke. But she kept going. Vanessa would have been a much better match for someone like Luis. She's more beautiful, more successful, and honestly, more deserving of a man like him. I hope Luis knows what he's getting, but it's not too late to upgrade. The table went dead silent. The air crackled with shock. Luis's parents looked absolutely horrified. Luis himself looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. And Vanessa? She just sat there, a smug little smile playing on her lips, as if she agreed with every single toxic word. My face burned. My hands started to shake, a tremor that ran through my entire body. 26 years of being told I wasn't good enough, of being the consolation prize, came crashing down on me all at once. "No," I heard myself say, my voice trembling but firm. I stood up, pushing back my chair with a screech. "I have something to say, too." My mother's eyes widened, surprised. 2 months ago, I continued, each word a hammer blow. "I was helping you set up your new phone. And I saw your messages. With Vanessa." Their faces, my mother's and Vanessa's, went utterly, sickeningly white. "I saw every single text where you talked about me behind my back. Mom, you called me an embarrassment. Vanessa, you said I was punching above my weight with Luis. And Mom, you agreed, saying you didn't understand what he saw in me." I paused, letting the truth hang heavy in the air. "And then, I saw your plan. Your plan for Vanessa to flirt with Luis tonight, right here, to see if his head could be turned." My mother stammered, You're taking things out of context. Vanessa scoffed. You're being dramatic. But it was too late. Luis, my wonderful Luis, stood up. His voice was low, laced with a quiet fury. Both of you, he commanded, leave. My mother, predictably, burst into theatrical tears. You're ruining the family, she wailed. No, I told her, my voice clear now, steady. You ruined it. 26 years ago, when you decided I would never be good enough. They left, their dramatic exit the final act in their pathetic play. Luis's mother, a true angel, came over and hugged me tight. You handled that, she whispered, with more grace than they deserved. But that wasn't the end. Oh no. What my mother didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I'd screenshotted every single one of those vile messages. And the family group chat, the one with all our aunts, uncles, cousins, and even grandparents, was about to get a very interesting update. I sat in my car in the restaurant parking lot for what felt like an eternity, maybe 20 minutes. My finger hovered over the send button. The screenshots were queued up, a digital bombshell. Once I hit send, there was no taking it back. My hands were still shaking from the confrontation, but a strange clarity settled over me, a feeling I hadn't had in years. The steering wheel was cold beneath my palms. I could see my breath fogging up the windshield. I scrolled through the screenshots one last time. Every cruel text. My mother calling me an embarrassment. Vanessa saying I was punching above my weight. Their twisted plan for tonight, laid out in black and white. Send. The message delivered to 43 family members. Within seconds, the read receipts started popping up. 1, 3, 7, 15. My phone erupted, buzzing relentlessly with incoming messages. The screen flashed over and over. I watched the notifications pile up, but I couldn't bring myself to open them. Someone was calling. Then someone else. I silenced my phone and dropped it into the cup holder. Luis found me there, opening the passenger door and sliding in without a word. He gently took my phone, turned it off. Then, he just held my hand while I finally let myself cry. His parents followed us home, a silent, comforting convoy. That night, Luis's mom made me tea, not asking questions, just sitting beside me, rubbing small circles on my back. Luis and his father talked quietly in the kitchen, their low voices a steady hum. His mother stayed over in our guest room. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 217 notifications. My stomach dropped. Luis's mom, already awake, sat with me. Glasses perched on her nose. She helped me sort through the chaos. Some family members were furious with me. Others were fiercely supportive. My uncle Dominic sent a long message, admitting he'd always suspected my mother treated me differently, but never realized how truly awful it was. He apologized for his silence. Aunt Fern called, talking for an hour about her own experiences with my mother's cruelty, how Mom always needed a target to feel superior. Before me, it was Fern. Her voice cracked as she told me she should have been braver, should have protected me. 3 cousins from my father's side created a separate group chat, carefully excluding my mother, Vanessa, and even my grandmother. They shared stories, things I never knew my mother said about me at family gatherings I hadn't attended. One said Mom claimed I was lucky to have any job, given my limited abilities. Another recounted Mom complaining I embarrassed the family by not being as accomplished as Vanessa. The pattern of her cruelty was far more extensive than I'd ever realized. My mother's text swung between absolute rage and desperate guilt-tripping. Ungrateful. Humiliated me. She demanded I delete the messages, apologize. When I didn't respond, she threatened to show up at my apartment. Luis, without hesitation, changed our door code and called building security, giving them a physical description of my mother. He made the call right in front of me as I read her escalating threats. Vanessa tried a different tactic, texting Luis directly. She apologized for the misunderstanding, asking if they could talk privately to clear the air. Luis just screenshot it, showed it to me, and blocked her number. No response. Not a moment's pause. My father called for the first time 3 days after the dinner. He sounded utterly exhausted. He said my mother was hysterical, but he admitted what she said was wrong. He suggested family therapy. I told him I wasn't interested in fixing something my mother didn't think was broken. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said he understood and hung up. Luis's best friend, Grant, came over with takeout, telling me half his family was now following the drama, thanks to Luis's parents. He said his own mother had dealt with a toxic sister and cutting contact was the best thing she ever did. That validation, from outside my immediate toxic circle, made me feel a little less crazy. Grant stayed for dinner, telling stories about his mother's journey to set boundaries, and for the first time in days, I actually laughed. Regina, my best friend from high school, texted 3 days after Grant left. We'd lost touch after graduation, my mother always finding excuses to keep us apart. Now, she wanted to meet. She drove 2 hours to get coffee near my apartment. Her smile was warm, familiar. She said she'd seen everything in the group chat. She told me she'd watched my mother treat me badly since we were kids, and she'd stopped coming to family events 5 years ago because she couldn't bear to witness it anymore. Her voice got quiet as she apologized for not speaking up sooner, for being too young and scared of my mother's wrath. She described a Christmas dinner when I was 12, where Mom spent an hour praising Vanessa, completely ignoring me, though I was sitting right there. Regina said she went home and cried, so angry on my behalf. She squeezed my hand across the table. "You're brave," she told me, "for finally standing up. I'm so proud." We talked for 2 hours. She shared her own story of a complicated mother, of setting boundaries that change her life. When we left, she made me promise we'd stay in touch. "I want to be part of your life now," she said, "without your mother controlling who you can see." The drive home felt lighter, knowing I had her support. The family group chat exploded again while I was having dinner with Luis. My phone buzzed so violently I had to turn it face down. Luis picked it up, his face tightening as he read the notifications. My grandmother had posted a long, furious message defending my mother. She called me too sensitive, claimed I was making a big deal out of nothing, and that Mom loved both her daughters equally. She accused me of tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. The replies came fast. Uncle Dominic wrote back, "It wasn't the misunderstanding. I saw the screenshots." Aunt Fern posted, "I'm tired of making excuses for her cruelty." Someone I barely knew chimed in, "You should forgive your mother. Family is everything." Another cousin shot back, "Family doesn't give you permission to be cruel." The thread became a war zone, people taking sides, old grudges resurfacing. Luis finally grabbed my phone and turned off the notifications. "You don't need to read any more of this tonight," he said. I felt sick knowing my grandmother was defending my mother after all she'd seen. We ordered takeout and watched a movie, but I couldn't stop thinking about the messages piling up. 4 days later, a thick letter arrived in my mailbox. My mother's handwriting. My stomach plummeted. 6 pages, front and back, in her neat, venomous cursive. She started by claiming she was heartbroken I wouldn't answer her calls. The toast, she wrote, was just a joke, and I took it the wrong way. She insisted she'd always loved us equally, that I was remembering my childhood wrong. She said she was hard on me because she wanted me to reach my full potential, citing times she helped with homework or drove me to soccer, as if those erased everything. She claimed Vanessa was devastated and that I was destroying our family by being selfish and cruel. The letter was a masterclass in manipulation, relentless blame shift. She never apologized for what she said, never admitted her words were wrong, only that I was too sensitive I held grudges. The last page said she would forgive me if I apologized to her and Vanessa publicly in the group chat. "Love, Mom." She signed it as if nothing she wrote was hurtful. I read it twice. My hands shook again. The anger simmered in my chest until I had to move. I grabbed my keys. "I need to walk," I told Luis. He offered to come, but I needed to be alone. I walked around the block 3 times in the cold air, trying to calm the storm inside. My mother still didn't understand. She still thought she was the victim. The letter, meant to fix things, had only made them worse. That night, Luis found me staring at my phone. He sat beside me. "Want to get away for the weekend?" he asked. "Somewhere quiet. No phones for a few days." I agreed instantly. The constant buzzing, the family drama, it was exhausting me. The next morning, we packed and drove 3 hours to a cozy bed and breakfast in the mountains. We spent the first day hiking, not talking about my family. Luis pointed out birds and interesting trees. We sat by a stream, listening to the water. The second day, we hiked to a lookout point, eating sandwiches, watching the clouds. My phone stayed in my bag the entire time. Without the constant barrage of messages, I could finally think. I realized how much energy I'd spent my entire life trying to make my mother proud. Every decision filtered through her potential judgment. Every accomplishment felt hollow because I knew she'd compare it to Vanessa's. Even my career choices were subtly influenced by seeking her approval. Sitting there looking out at that vast, beautiful valley, I understood. I would never get what I wanted from her. She would never see me the way I needed her to. The thought, astonishingly, didn't hurt. It felt like relief. I didn't have to try anymore. Luis took my hand, and we sat there until the sun began to set. On the drive home, I felt different, lighter. The distance had helped me see that my mother's opinion didn't define my worth. Back home, I turned on my phone. 53 new messages. Most from the family group chat, but several from Uncle Cash's. He'd been trying to organize a family meeting with a professional mediator, even sending details for a therapist specializing in family conflict. He meant well. "We could work through this," he'd written, "if everyone just sits down and talks honestly." But the idea made me so tired. I called him back, thanked him for trying. I told him I wasn't interested in sitting in a room with my mother and Vanessa. He sounded disappointed, said he understood that families were complicated but hated seeing everyone torn apart. I explained that I wasn't the one who tore things apart. My mother did that years ago. I was just finally responding. He was quiet for a minute. "I get it," he said, then told me the invitation stood if I changed my mind. "I'll always be there if you need me." I appreciated his effort, but I knew a mediator wouldn't fix this. My mother would just use it as another stage for her victim act. Cash's ended the call. "Take care of yourself." I promised I would. An Instagram message from an unknown account popped up. Random letters and numbers. Blank profile picture. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. Heard about everything through mutual friends. Want to reconnect. It was from Vivian, my high school best friend. We'd lost touch after she went to college across the country. Seeing her name brought back a flood of memories. Sleepovers, late-night talks. I messaged her back. We made plans for lunch. She picked a restaurant halfway between us. When I walked in, she stood up and hugged me fiercely. She looked different, but her laugh was exactly the same. We caught up, sharing stories about our jobs, apartments, dating lives. Then she brought up my mother. "I always thought your mom was cruel," she admitted, remembering how Mom praised Vanessa while ignoring me. She recalled a time I got second place in a school competition and my mother's only comment was, "It's a shame you couldn't be first, like Vanessa." Vivian said she wanted to say something back then, but didn't know how. She was just a kid, and my mother scared her. She apologized for not being braver. I told her there was nothing she could have done. We talked for 3 hours, exchanged numbers, and she made me promise we'd stay in touch this time. Having her back felt like finding a piece of myself I'd forgotten existed. 2 days later, a new Instagram account started messaging me. The messages claimed Vanessa was the real victim, that I'd turned the whole family against her, that she never wanted to hurt me, was just following our mother's lead. I read them, searching for any real apology, any acknowledgement of her actions. Nothing. Just excuses, blame shifting. She claimed she was in therapy now, working on herself, and hoped we could rebuild our relationship. The tone was all wrong, like she was reading from a script. No genuine understanding of the harm she'd caused. I screenshot every message, adding them to the folder on my phone where I kept evidence of their behavior. Then I blocked the account. Within an hour, a different account messaged me with the same profile picture. I blocked that one too. Vanessa was relentless, but I was done engaging with her manipulation. Luis's parents invited us for dinner that Saturday. His mom made pot roast, his dad set the table with their nice dishes. After dinner, Luis's mom asked to speak to me privately. In the living room, she sat beside me, took my hand. "No matter what happens with your own family," she said softly, "we consider you part of ours. I've already started thinking of you as my daughter." Her eyes welled up. "I'm so proud of how you've handled everything. Watching you set boundaries, stand up for yourself, it's been inspiring." She admitted her own mother had been difficult, that she understood how hard this was. "You'll always have a place in our family," she promised. The acceptance, so unconditional, made my throat tight. Tears streamed down my face, and she hugged me fiercely. I thought this is what a mother's love is supposed to feel like. Support without conditions, pride without comparison, love without cruelty. Luis and his father came back in, saw us crying. Luis's dad made a gentle joke about women and emotions, his voice kind. They all hugged me before we left. The drive home was quiet, peaceful. I had a family now, just not the one I was born into. My boss called me into her office Monday morning. My heart raced. I assumed I was in trouble. Instead, she told me I was being promoted to senior analyst, with a raise and my own office. "You've earned it," she said, "through your work quality and leadership." I thanked her, somehow making it back to my desk without floating away. The first people I called were Luis and his parents. Luis screamed into the phone, "We're celebrating tonight." His mother cried happy tears, so proud. Sitting at my desk, phone in hand, it hit me. I hadn't thought about calling my mother. The impulse to share good news with her just wasn't there anymore. I waited for the sadness to come. It didn't. Instead, I felt lighter. I was building a life where her opinion didn't matter, and that realization didn't hurt the way I thought it would. Regina texted, asking for coffee. She looked serious. "Vanessa reached out," she told me, asking if I'd mediate a conversation between you two. Regina said she told Vanessa she'd ask me, but wouldn't pressure me. "What do you want to do?" I looked her in the eye. "I'm not ready, and I might never be." Regina nodded. "That's a completely valid choice." She promised to tell Vanessa no, without making me the bad guy. I thanked her for respecting my decision, for not trying to convince me that family should forgive. Regina squeezed my hand. "Some family relationships aren't worth saving," she said, "and that's okay." 2 weeks later, my father texted, asking to meet for coffee. He said my mother didn't know he was reaching out, that he wanted to talk alone. I agreed, picking a spot across town where we wouldn't run into anyone. He looked older, his shoulders slumped. He stood when he saw me, and we hugged awkwardly. He asked how I was. I said fine, which was mostly true. Then he was quiet, stirring his coffee, not adding anything. Finally, he looked up. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry for not protecting you better when you were growing up." He admitted living with my mother's anger had been exhausting, and he couldn't pretend anymore that what she did was normal. He looked so tired, like admitting this aloud had taken something from him. I didn't know what to say. I'd waited my whole life to hear him acknowledge it, but now I felt numb. The apology didn't fix anything. It didn't give me back my childhood. "It's more accountability than I expected," I told him. We sat for another hour, talking about small things, avoiding the real conversation. When we were leaving, I told him I'd have a relationship with him if he could respect my boundaries. "I won't discuss my mother, and I won't let you try to reconcile us." He agreed immediately, almost desperately, like he'd been waiting for permission to have a relationship with me that didn't involve her. We decided to meet once a month for coffee, keeping it simple. It wasn't a close relationship, but it was more honest than what we'd had. I drove home feeling strange, like I'd made peace with something I didn't know I needed to make peace with. The next morning, my grandmother's text. Long, formal, probably hours in the making. She said I was no longer welcome at family holidays. She was ashamed of me, a daughter who would humiliate her mother in public. She listed all the upcoming holidays I was banned from, like she was crossing my name off a guest list. I read it twice. I waited for the hurt. Instead, relief washed over me. I was being excluded from events that always made me miserable anyway. Thanksgiving dinners where my mother commented on my weight, Christmas mornings where my gifts were practical socks while Vanessa got jewelry. Easter brunches where my grandmother asked why I wasn't married. Now, I had an excuse to skip it all, guilt-free. I screenshotted the message, sent it to Luis. I guess we're having our own holidays now. He responded instantly. My parents already invited us to everything. We're starting our own traditions. I deleted my grandmother's message without responding and made myself breakfast, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Luis and I spent the next Saturday looking at wedding venues. We'd seen 3 places that were fine, but nothing felt right. Then we pulled up to a small garden tucked behind a historic downtown building. The owner showed us around, and I fell in love immediately. Stone pathways, flower beds, an arbor covered in climbing roses. A patio for maybe 50 people, string lights draped between the trees. It was intimate, beautiful. Nothing like the big, flashy venues my mother would have wanted. Luis squeezed my hand. I knew he felt it too. We booked it for 6 months out. The owner congratulated us. You two are going to have a beautiful wedding. Driving home, we talked about the guest list. Luis suggested we only invite people who genuinely celebrated our relationship. No obligation invites. No family members who made us uncomfortable. Just the people who had shown up for us. Planning the wedding started to feel joyful, not stressful. We stopped for lunch, making lists on napkins. His entire family. My father, Aunt Fern and Uncle Dominic, Regina and Vivian. Our close friends. By the time we were done, the list had 42 names. Every single one made me happy. I was at the grocery store when I saw one of my mother's friends. She spotted me before I could duck down another aisle, approaching with that tight, fake concerned smile. Heard about what happened at the engagement dinner, she purred. Your mother's heartbroken. Such a shame when children don't appreciate everything their parents do. She looked at me, expecting an apology, a defense. Instead, I looked her dead in the eye. My mother broke my heart for 26 years. One uncomfortable dinner doesn't compare. If you're so concerned about her feelings, maybe ask her why she thought it was okay to tell me my sister deserved my fiancé more. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I pushed my cart past her, walking away feeling a surge of pride. My hands shook a little as I finished shopping, but it was from adrenaline, not shame. I was learning to defend myself without guilt. In my next therapy session, I told Dr. Miller about the grocery store, about my father. She listened. How do you feel? She asked gently, about the idea of losing your mother permanently? I hesitated. I don't know, I admitted, because I'm not sure I ever really had the mother I needed in the first place. She nodded. You're mourning the relationship you needed, she explained, not the one that actually existed. It was normal, she said, to grieve the parent I wished I had, while also accepting the real relationship was harmful. Understanding that distinction made something click. I'd been waiting my whole life for my mother to become the parent I deserved. But it was never going to happen. The mother I needed didn't exist. What I was losing was the hope she might change. And that hope was keeping me stuck. Dr. Miller asked what it would look like to stop waiting for her, to become someone different. I thought about it. It looked like the life I was building now. A life where her opinion didn't define my worth. A life where her presence didn't determine my happiness. I left her office feeling like I'd put down something heavy I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Vivian called that weekend, inviting me to meet some of her friends. I was nervous, but I agreed. At her apartment, there were 6 other women. No one asked about my family drama. We talked about normal things: work, TV shows, travel. They asked about my job, my wedding plans, genuinely interested. Nobody compared me to anyone. Nobody made me feel like I needed to prove myself. The conversation flowed easily. I realized I'd been so isolated by family drama for years that I'd forgotten what normal friendships felt like. These people knew me as I was now, not as the backup daughter. When I left, I had 3 new phone numbers, plans for brunch. Vivian texted, "Glad you came. My friends really liked you." It was such a simple thing, but it made me feel like I was building a real life, separate from my family history. Monday morning, a huge bouquet of flowers arrived at my office. My coworkers gathered as I read the card. It said, "She forgives me," in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. I stared at it, then actually laughed out loud. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost comical. She forgives me? Like I was the one who did something wrong. Like she was the bigger person for overlooking my terrible behavior. My coworker asked if everything was okay. "These flowers," I told her, "are from someone who doesn't understand that forgiveness works both ways." I looked up nursing homes nearby, found one 2 blocks away. During lunch, I walked the bouquet over and donated it to their activities coordinator. She was thrilled. The residents will love having fresh flowers. I didn't text my mother, didn't call, didn't send a thank you card. The silence was my answer. And it felt powerful. That evening, Luis asked if my mother had sent anything else. I told him about the flowers. He shook his head. "She still doesn't get it." "No," I said. "I think she finally does get it. She just doesn't want to accept it. There's a difference between not understanding and not wanting to change." My mother fell into the second category. 2 weeks later, Luis's mom called, asking if we could come for dinner. When we arrived, his whole family was there. His mother pulled me aside. "Would it be okay," she asked, her voice gentle, "if we officially introduced you as our future daughter-in-law at a family reunion we're planning? We want everyone to know how happy we are you're joining the family." The invitation made me emotional. This was the family acceptance I'd always craved. "Yes," I choked out. "Thank you for thinking of me." 3 weeks later, at the reunion, Luis's extended family welcomed me with genuine warmth. His grandmother hugged me, heard wonderful things. Cousins asked about the wedding, wanting to see pictures. One of his aunts pulled me aside. "I can see how happy you make Luis. That's all that matters to us." Nobody asked invasive questions about my family. Nobody made me feel like I needed to explain anything. They accepted me because Luis loved me, because I was kind. And that was enough. I spent the afternoon talking, laughing, feeling truly seen. When we left, I told Luis his family was amazing. "They think you're amazing too," he said. For the first time, I was part of a family that actually wanted me there. I was sitting at my desk one afternoon when I realized it. I hadn't anxiously checked my phone for messages from my mother or Vanessa in days. The constant vigilance, the bracing for impact that had defined months of my life, had faded without me even noticing. I used to wake up, grab my phone, ready for whatever manipulation or guilt trip waited for me. Now, I checked messages when I felt like it. I didn't panic at notifications. That evening in therapy, I told Dr. Miller. She smiled. "This is what peace feels like," she said. "You should pay attention to how different your life is without their toxicity." She asked me to describe it. It felt like breathing easier, like not having a knot in my stomach all the time, like being able to enjoy good things without waiting for someone to ruin them. "You've done the hard work of setting boundaries," she reminded me. "Now you're experiencing the reward." Peace, she said, didn't mean nothing bad would ever happen. It just meant I wasn't living in constant crisis mode anymore. I drove home, grateful for how far I'd come, how much lighter my life felt. 2 weeks later, Fern called. "Come over for dinner," she said. "Just us, Dominic, and a few others who supported you. I'm thinking of starting a new tradition for the people in our family who actually care about healthy relationships." I agreed. That Saturday night, her house was filled with laughter. Regina was there. 2 cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone hugged me, told me how proud they were. We ate lasagna, garlic bread. Nobody brought up my mother or Vanessa, unless it was to support the boundaries I'd set. Fern raised her glass. "I want to make this a quarterly thing. Just us. The family members who believe in treating each other with respect." Everyone agreed. I felt like I'd found something I didn't know I needed. This was what family dinner should feel like. Relaxed, full of actual laughter, not tension or comparisons. 3 days later, Luis and I celebrated our 1-year dating anniversary. He took me to the same restaurant as our first date. Over dessert, he said, "You've changed so much in the past few months. Watching you stand up for yourself at that engagement dinner, it made me love you even more. It showed me how strong you really are." I told him I'd been terrified that setting boundaries would push people away. But instead, I said, it just made room for better relationships. He reached across the table, took my hand. "Exactly," he said. "Protecting yourself didn't cost you love. It just cleared out the fake love to make space for the real thing." He was right. And I was so grateful he was by my side through it all. A week later, a Facebook message from a cousin I barely knew, Sarah, who lived 3 states away. She'd heard about my mother through the grapevine and reached out because she was dealing with something similar, a favorite brother, feeling invisible. She asked for advice. I wrote back, telling her about therapy, setting boundaries, learning you can't make someone value you. We messaged for an hour. By the end, she thanked me for being honest about how hard it was. Turning my painful experience into something that helped someone else felt meaningful in a way I didn't expect. I showed my therapist part of our conversation. She smiled. "This," she said, "is part of your healing, too." My father called a few days later, asking to meet for coffee. He looked nervous. He told me he'd started therapy himself. "I don't want to get into all the details," he said, "but your boundary letter, it made me realize some things." He admitted he'd spent decades enabling my mother, pretending her behavior wasn't so bad. He admitted he should have protected me. I appreciated that he was taking responsibility, even if it was too late to change the past. He asked if we could keep our monthly coffee meetings. "Yes," I said, "as long as you respect my boundaries about not discussing my mother." He agreed. We finished our coffee talking about safer topics. Vanessa sent an email to my work address 2 weeks later. Subject line: final message. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. She wrote that she'd accepted I don't want a relationship with her. She wasn't going to try to contact me anymore. She hoped I'd be happy, and said she was moving on. No actual apology for anything she did. Just vague words. I read it twice. Deleted it. I didn't owe her closure. Her happiness wasn't my responsibility. The fact that she still couldn't apologize for her actions told me everything I needed to know about whether she'd really changed. Luis and I spent an entire Sunday afternoon finalizing our wedding guest list. The final count: 42 people. His entire family. My father, Fern and Dominic, Regina, supportive cousins, our close friends. I even added my therapist as a guest. She'd been such an important part of my healing. Luis looked at the list. "This represents something important," he said. "These are people we chose, or who chose us, not people we're inviting out of obligation." The list felt right. I didn't feel guilty about who was missing. I started writing my wedding vows. Personal. Honest. I included a line about building a family based on respect and genuine love. About choosing each other every day, creating something better than what we came from. I read them to Luis during our rehearsal dinner practice. He got tears in his eyes halfway through. When I finished, his parents came over, hugged me tight. His mother said she was honored to be part of my new family story. His father said they'd always wanted a daughter, and they were so glad it was me. Their acceptance still caught me off guard sometimes, so different from what I grew up with. 3 weeks before the wedding, Luis's mother called, sounding upset. My mother had sent a letter to their house, asking them to convince me to invite her to the wedding. Pages and pages about how hurt she was, how she was my mother, and deserved to be there. Luis's mom read me a few lines, the manipulation oozing from every word. We decided she'd write back, politely saying it wasn't her place to interfere. "I support whatever boundaries you need to set," Luis's mom assured me. I was so grateful they protected my choices without me even asking. Regina called a few days later, offering to be mother duty on the wedding day. She'd keep an eye out for my mother, handle it if she showed up uninvited. Luis and I talked it over. We hired security for the venue, just in case. The security company said they dealt with uninvited wedding guests more often than people thought. Knowing I was protected, I could finally look forward to my wedding day, instead of dreading what my mother might do. Regina texted later, "I've got your back, no matter what." I believed her. The week before the wedding, I woke up feeling genuinely happy. Excited, not anxious. I got ready for work, realizing I wasn't bracing myself for something to go wrong, for someone to ruin the day. In therapy that afternoon, I mentioned it to Dr. Miller. She pointed out that this was what it looked like when you weren't constantly preparing for criticism or disappointment. "You've done the hard work," she said. "Now you get to experience what peace actually feels like." I was marrying someone who loved me exactly as I was, surrounded by people who celebrated me. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to prove my worth to anyone. The relief of that realization made me emotional in the best possible way. Fern's house smelled like vanilla and flowers when I arrived for my bridal shower. The living room was packed with women who had shown up for me, not out of obligation, but because they actually wanted to celebrate. Regina hugged me at the door, whispering she'd helped Fern plan everything. Luis's mother and two of his aunts waved from the couch, chatting with Vivian. My cousin Sarah brought her daughter. Even my therapist accepted the invitation, which made me feel seen in a way I never expected. Fern had set up games and decorations, but what hit me hardest was that nobody here had ever made me feel like I wasn't enough. The shower started with everyone sharing a story about me. I braced myself for the usual backhanded compliments. But Regina went first, talking about the time I stood up to a bully in middle school, how it showed I had more courage than most adults. Vivian told everyone about how I helped her through her parents' divorce, just by listening. Luis's aunt mentioned how Luis lit up every time he talked about me. Each story revealed qualities I didn't know other people noticed. Strengths my mother never acknowledged because she was too busy comparing me to Vanessa. By the time we got to the gift opening, I was crying happy tears. Fern handed me tissues, laughing. The gifts were thoughtful, personal, chosen by people who knew me. Then Luis's mother stood up. "Can I give you something special?" she asked. She pulled out a delicate silver bracelet with tiny charms. Her voice shook a little as she explained it belonged to her own mother. "I've been waiting for the right person," she said, "someone who would appreciate not just the jewelry, but what it represents." She fastened it around my wrist. "It's your something borrowed. But really, it's about welcoming you into our family officially." I lost it completely, hugging her as everyone else got teary too. This was what it felt like to be chosen, valued. To receive love without waiting for the criticism that always followed it in my original family. The shower wrapped up with cake and more laughter. As people left, each one hugged me, told me how happy they were for my wedding. Driving home, I kept looking at the bracelet, thinking about how different this celebration was from anything my mother ever hosted for me. 2 days before the wedding, my phone rang. My father. My stomach tightened automatically, even though we'd been doing better. He asked if I had a minute. I stepped onto the balcony. He confirmed he was still walking me down the aisle. Then his voice got quieter. "I know I can't make up for all the years I stood by," he said, "but I want to be part of your future, if you'll let me." Watching me set boundaries, build a life without my mother's toxicity, had made him realize how much damage he allowed by staying silent. I told him yes, he could walk me down the aisle. Our relationship would never be what it could have been, but I appreciated his effort now. He thanked me, his voice cracking a little. After we hung up, I sat on the balcony, thinking about forgiveness and second chances. I wasn't ready to forget everything, but I was willing to let him try. The morning of the wedding, I woke up calm. No anxiety. Luis had already left for his parents' house. Regina and Vivian arrived with coffee and bagels. They helped me shower, start on my hair. The whole process felt easy, fun. We laughed about Regina's disastrous state, Vivian's new puppy. No underlying tension. No competition. When it was time for my dress, they both helped with the tiny buttons. And when I finally looked in the mirror, I felt beautiful, without needing anyone to tell me I was. The dress fit perfectly. The bracelet from Luis's mother caught the light. Regina took a million photos. Vivian got emotional. This was what getting ready for your wedding should feel like. No one comparing me, pointing out flaws, making jokes at my expense. Just 3 women celebrating a happy moment. It felt completely right. The ceremony venue was exactly what Luis and I wanted. A small garden, flowers everywhere, chairs for our 42 guests. I waited in the back room with my father. When it was time, he offered his arm, and we stepped into the sunlight. Luis was standing at the front, with the officiant. The second he saw me, tears started running down his face. My father walked slowly, making the moment last. Halfway down the aisle, he leaned over and whispered, "I'm proud of you." For once, I believed a family member's compliment without analyzing it for hidden criticism. When we reached the front, my father hugged me, then handed me off to Luis, crying himself. The ceremony was simple, perfect. Luis started his vows. His voice shook as he promised to always see my worth, even when I struggled to see it myself. To be my family when my original family failed me. To spend every day proving that I deserved to be loved exactly as I was. By the time he finished, half the guests were crying. I managed to get through my own vows about building something better together. When the officiant pronounced us married, Luis kissed me, and everyone applauded. The reception was in the same garden, under string lights that made everything glow. We ate, talked, danced. Dominic stood up to give a toast. He talked about how the strongest families are the ones we choose, not just the ones we're born into. How watching me set boundaries and build a life on my own terms had inspired other family members to examine their own relationships. This room, he said, gesturing to everyone, full of people who actually love her, is more like family than any holiday gathering ever was. Several people nodded in agreement. When Luis and I danced to our first song, I realized I wasn't thinking about who was missing from the room. I wasn't scanning for my mother or Vanessa, or wondering if they'd show up to ruin things. I was fully present with the people who did show up. The ones who proved their love through actions, not just words. My mother's absence didn't diminish the joy at all. If anything, it protected it. At the end of the night, Luis's parents found us by the cake table. His mother pulled me into a hug. "I didn't just gain a daughter-in-law today," she whispered. "I gained a daughter." And the distinction mattered more than I could explain. His father said they were proud to call me family. I thanked them for accepting me so completely. I was building a new family story where I was valued and celebrated, where my worth wasn't dependent on comparison or competition. My mother's narrative about me being the backup daughter had no power here. Luis and I said goodbye to the last guests and headed to our hotel. I felt lighter than I had in years. On our honeymoon in Hawaii, Luis and I spent the first few days just relaxing, letting go of all the drama. One evening, watching the sunset, we talked about the future. What kind of parents we wanted to be. "I want our kids to feel equally loved and supported," Luis said. I agreed immediately. We talked about how we'd never compare siblings, never play favorites. How we'd celebrate each child's unique strengths instead of ranking them. Our children, I promised, will never wonder which one is loved more. We're breaking the cycle of favoritism and comparison that my mother created. Turning my pain into a promise to do better felt like the ultimate victory over my mother's legacy. Taking all that hurt, transforming it into something protective and healing for the next generation. Somewhere during the honeymoon, I realized I'd stopped defining myself in relation to Vanessa or my mother. When I thought about who I was, I didn't automatically compare myself to my sister, or measure my worth by my mother's standards. I wasn't the backup daughter anymore. I was just myself, and that was enough. The voice in my head that used to sound like my mother's criticism had gotten quieter, replaced by my own voice telling me I was worthy, exactly as I am. I looked at Luis sleeping beside me one morning and thought about the life we were building together. I felt grateful for every hard decision that led me here. Setting boundaries hurt. It cost me relationships. But it also freed me to become someone I actually liked. 3 months after the wedding, I was at a coffee shop when my phone rang. My father. I answered. His voice was quieter than usual. "I need to talk," he said. He'd moved into a hotel. He'd separated from my mother. The words hung in the air. He explained that watching me build a life without her toxicity had made him realize how much her behavior affected his own happiness. He sounded tired, but also relieved, like he'd been carrying something heavy for years and finally set it down. I told him I wasn't going to pressure him about his long-term decisions, but I was glad he was taking care of himself. We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important, just normal conversation, without the weight of my mother's presence influencing every word. When we hung up, I sat with my coffee. This is what happens, I realized, when you stop accepting cruelty as normal. Other people start to notice it, too. The following week, my regular therapy appointment. Dr. Miller reviewed my progress. She suggested we move to monthly sessions. You've built such a strong foundation of self-worth, she said. She reminded me healing isn't a straight line. I'd have hard days. But the work I'd done meant my mother's voice in my head didn't control me anymore. I could hear criticism without believing I deserved it. I could set boundaries without drowning in guilt. I could accept love without waiting for the conditions that came after it. I left her office, walking to my car, feeling so proud of how far I'd come from the woman who used to apologize for existing. November arrived. Luis and I decided to host our first holiday dinner in our apartment. His parents, my father, Aunt Fern, Uncle Dominic, Regina, Vivian, Grant. I spent the morning cooking while Luis set the table. When everyone arrived, the apartment filled with voices and laughter that felt genuine. Nobody made comparisons. Nobody gave compliments with hidden insults. Fern brought a pie and hugged me in the kitchen. "So happy to see you thriving," she whispered. My father sat on the couch, talking golf with Luis's dad, easy and comfortable. Grant told a funny story about Luis in college. Vivian helped me carry dishes. We ate, talked. Someone suggested a game. The whole evening felt warm and safe. This was what family was supposed to feel like. People who showed up because they wanted to, not because they had to. People who celebrated you, instead of tolerated you. I looked around the table, at faces that chose to be here. I finally had what I always wanted. A year has passed since that engagement dinner that changed everything. I wake up next to Luis in the apartment we share, and I think about how different my life looks now. I have a husband who loves me, without conditions or comparisons. I have in-laws who treat me like their actual daughter, not someone they're stuck with. I have a chosen family of relatives and friends who celebrate my wins and support me through hard days. But most importantly, I have my own approval. I don't need my mother to validate my worth anymore, because I know it myself. Her opinion used to define everything about how I saw myself. Now, it's just noise I don't have to listen to. The freedom that comes from that realization is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every boundary I had to set, every relationship I had to let go of to protect my peace. I'm not the backup daughter anymore. I'm just me. And that's enough. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with someone you loved, even when it broke your heart? What did it teach you about your own strength? Let me know your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'd really love to hear from you.